Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a world where memory isn't just recall, but a vibrant, often really disorienting recreation of reality. We're sifting through fragments of consciousness, those unexpected sensory triggers, and the fascinating ways our minds piece together what we perceive as real. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack how our experiences, particularly those seemingly mundane moments, can hold the keys to vast landscapes of memory. We'll explore how society shapes our perceptions of others and ourselves, how love and desire, well, blur the lines between imagination and reality, and ultimately how art can both reflect and redefine truth. All of this through the rich introspective sources we've been given from Marcel Proust's In Search of Lost Time. Okay, let's unpack this.
What's truly fascinating in our source material right from the start is the almost physical sensation of memory, rather than, a purely mental one. Imagine waking up in a strange hotel room, that initial disorientation, not knowing where you are, what time it is, or even who you are for a fleeting moment. Our source vividly describes this, with the narrator feeling his cheeks gently against the comfortable cheeks of my pillow, plump and blooming as the cheeks of babyhood. This isn't just a fleeting thought of being somewhere unfamiliar. It's an immediate tactile experience, a slow dawning from a state of total unknowing. Almost like an invalid in a strange hotel room, searching for a streak of daylight under the door. The mind, for a brief instant, is a blank slate, just waiting for the body's familiar sensations to anchor it back to a recognizable reality. It's as if the physical comfort of the pillow is the first clue, a soft whisper that begins to guide the reestablishment of consciousness and identity.
That feeling is universal, isn't it? That moment of quiet dread, or maybe even momentary panic, when you stir and your mind isn't quite caught up with your body. But what's happening there, really, beyond mere recall, when the text describes the wall sliding away in another direction and the narrator suddenly realizing he's in the Dossant Loose house in the country, it's not just thinking about a past location. It's almost a physical re-entry. It's as if the very rooms themselves have a memory and are revealing themselves layer by layer.
Yes, and the disorientation is key. He mentions a strange and pitiless mirror with square feet that cleared a sight he hadn't looked for. That emphasizes this initial spatial confusion, and then the mind's effort to elongate itself upward so as to take on the exact shape of the forgotten room.
So what does Proust suggest is actually occurring in the mind when this spatial memory kicks in? Is it truly a bodily mapping that pulls identity back into place?
Absolutely. Proust suggests it's a profound, almost primal sensory engagement. It's not simply recalling an image, but a re-embodiment of a past state. This immediate sensory connection is crucial to how memory works throughout the entire narrative. It's not about trying to remember, like actively searching for a file in your brain.
Right.
It's about being pulled back, almost against your will, by a sensation. The most famous instance of this, and perhaps one of the most iconic moments in literature, is the narrator's experience with, well, a simple cup of tea and a Madeleine. He describes compelling his mind to make one further effort to follow and recapture once again the fleeting sensation from a spoonful of tea.
Ah, the Madeleine moment.
Exactly, and this highlights that while the memory is involuntary in its initial trigger, the process of fully retrieving it requires a conscious, strenuous effort, a deliberate focus to shut out all extraneous ideas and sounds which come from the next room. It's a deep dive within the mind itself, a struggle to excavate what lies buried beneath the surface of everyday consciousness. It demands a singular attention to fully unearth its contents.
That sensory trigger, it's such a powerful idea. I think every listener has felt something like that. A smell, a taste, maybe a sound, instantly transporting you back to a moment you hadn't thought about in years. But to imagine an entire world springing into being from a single taste, that's something else. For the narrator, it's the taste of the tea. Made the whole of Cambrai and of its surroundings, sprang into being, town and gardens alike, from my cup of tea.
This isn't just nostalgia. It's described as a complete, vivid remanifestation, a total, almost physical recreation of an entire lost world.
It really is. Proust describes the entire garden, the church of Cambrai and Mille-Cures, and the whole of Cambrai and its surroundings taking shape and solidity from that small spoonful. It's incredibly detailed.
So what's the real power behind that magical key moment, where the tea acts as if it's unlocking not just a single memory, but an entire, fully realized landscape, complete with people, sounds, emotions, all instantly accessible, solid, and defined? The real power lies in what Proust calls involuntary memory, and it's absolutely central to the entire narrative. Unlike conscious recollection, which often feels like a dry, factual recall like, remembering a shopping list, These involuntary flashes bring with them an emotional depth and sensory richness that voluntary memory often lacks.
So it bypasses the thinking part.
Completely. It bypasses the conscious mind entirely, unleashing a torrent of emotion, detail, and even a physical re-experience of the past. Proust suggests this is the truer form of memory, revealing a deeper, often surprising connection to our past selves, and challenging the very notion of a static self. It highlights how the most trivial incidents of life, like a simple taste, can become a spring of romance, where a whole promontory of the inaccessible world rises clear in the light of our dream.
Wow.
This phenomenon shows that our perception of reality is not a static objective given, but is constantly being reconstructed by these hidden depths of our unconscious mind, pulling forth forgotten sensations and imbuing them with new meaning and profound emotional resonance.
So the takeaway here is that profound truths and emotional depth often lie hidden in the mundane. That's fascinating. Proust shows us that our greatest springs of romance and most potent insights into ourselves aren't found by searching for grand events, but by unlocking the magic in the everyday, the very moments we often overlook. It really challenges us to reconsider the insignificant as potentially the most significant, which suggests that our identity, our very sense of self, isn't a fixed thing, but rather a dynamic tapestry woven from these unpredictable threads of memory.
Exactly. The text calls the life of the mind the one most abundant and sudden reverses of fortune, the richest in episodes. And it mentions fragments of landscape floating uncertainly upon my mind, like a flowering isle of Delos.
Like Delos, the floating island. How does Proust envision these memories, even if seemingly detached from their original time and place, like that flowering isle, as fundamental to our continuous self-creation?
Proust sees them as the very building blocks of our evolving self. These aren't just recollections, they're moments of reliving, which means reshaping and understanding how our past continues to unfold within us, influencing our present perceptions and future trajectory. The flowering isle of Delos metaphor is brilliant. Delos was a floating island in Greek myth, appearing and disappearing. Similarly, these memories aren't fixed points on a map. They emerge, sometimes unexpectedly, bringing with them a freshness and vitality that conscious recall just can't match. They remind us that identity is a constantly evolving narrative, profoundly shaped by these deep sensory connections to our past. It's a continuous process of self-discovery, where the lost time isn't truly lost, but waiting to be spontaneously reanimated, offering a profound sense of continuity and an enriched understanding of who we are across the span of our lives. It's the constant interplay between the physical sensation, the emotional resonance, and the subsequent conscious effort to integrate that re-experienced past into our present reality.
Okay, so from that intimate, subjective landscape of memory, Proust then pulls back the curtain on the grand stage of society, showing us how we construct our external reality, the intricate, often artificial world of social interactions. It's here that the deep, authentic self we find in memory often clashes with the performances we put on for others.
Indeed. Our sources offer a fascinating, often biting look at this theater of society. The characters present themselves in very particular ways, constantly performing for an audience, often with a stark contrast between their public persona and private thoughts. This is a space where self-presentation is paramount, and authenticity often takes a backseat to maintaining appearances, to navigating intricate social codes that dictate behavior, language, and even perceived loyalties.
Yeah.
It's a world built on subtle gestures, unspoken rules, and constant judgment.
And nowhere is this clearer than in the description of the Verdurin salon. It's portrayed as this exclusive little clan where loyalty to the mistress, Madame Verdurin, is paramount. And anyone outside the inner circle is immediately labeled a bore or a nuisance.
Right. She's obsessed with cultivating her salon, sees it as the ultimate social achievement, even believing that her organ of social discernment terrifies others.
And the source describes Swann's initial joy in this group, thinking he would frequent their society for the rest of his life, finding inestimable boons in the presence of Odette. Yet his relationship with them later becomes much more distant as their true colors and their spite were revealed.
Exactly. And the way they maintain control, even through reproachful silence, when names like La Tremoille are mentioned, it underlines the rigid and artificial nature of this social sphere.
So what does Proust convey about the nature of these social circles, this constant assertion of superiority?
Proust is laying bare the profound insecurity at the heart of much social posturing, The Verdurin's constant need to categorize and exclude, to label those outside their circle as bores, stems not from genuine intellectual superiority, but from a desperate need to solidify their own precarious social standing. Their organ of social discernment is less about true judgment and more about maintaining control and reinforcing their self-appointed elite status. They thrive on insularity and a shared contempt for outsiders. It's a closed system. And that reproachful silence is a passive-aggressive yet potent tool of social enforcement, reminding their members of the hierarchy and the shared enemy of external society. It shows that social acceptance in such circles often demands a conformity of thought and expression, where true independent thought or connection outside the clan is met with subtle but powerful disapproval.
This raises an important question then. What truly drives these elaborate social performances? Take Le Grandin, for example. He's described as a Saint Sebastian of snobbery, riddled with reflexes that betray his true nature despite his charming vocabulary.
Oh, Le Grandin, yes.
He vehemently denies knowing the elite Guermantes family, even claiming it's the great sorrow of my life, while simultaneously being obsessed with gaining entry into such circles. Proust notes that Le Grandin's snobbery is so profound, he could not, from his own knowledge at least, be aware that he was one also, since it is only with the passions of others that he could perceive it. What does this profound blindness to self, this self-deception that his conscious denials are immediately undermined by his unconscious reflexes, reveal about human nature and the pressures of social ambition?
It reveals the profound power of self-deception when it comes to social aspiration. Le Grandin embodies the quintessential snob who desperately wants to appear above snobbery. His reflexes, his eagerness to be seen by the Guermantes, his elaborate linguistic contortions to deny their acquaintance, are unconscious tells. He genuinely believes his own narrative, even as his body language and actions betray him.
He really believes it.
Proust suggests so. He suggests that we are often blind to our own deepest motivations and flaws when they are tied to our social desires. He can only perceive snobbery in others, never in himself, because to admit it would shatter his carefully constructed self-image as someone detached and intellectually superior. It's a tragicomic portrayal of how social ambition can twist even an intelligent individual into a performative shell, constantly trying to mitigate the bad impression he unwittingly creates.
And then there's Françoise, the family servant. She has her own unique hierarchy and prejudices, embodying a complex blend of loyalty and rigid, almost tribal social views. She's portrayed as having singular implacability with the world outside her kin, yet crying in torrents when she read of the misfortunes of persons unknown to her in a newspaper.
It's such a strange contradiction. Her pity, chillingly, is directly proportional to the distance of the suffering. Physical proximity to pain seems to stem her tears.
And she holds strong royalist views, even expressing ill humor if the narrator associates with a Republican marquis, showing that class and political leanings are deeply ingrained within her own personal code.
Right, and her amusement at barbarians, anyone not acquainted with her employer's Saturday customs, is particularly vivid. It caused her as much merriment as perhaps anything that had ever happened in her life.
So what do these seemingly contradictory behaviors tell us about the hidden cruelties and surprising joys beneath a veneer of service? The source mentions her virtues concealed many of these back kitchen tragedies.
Françoise is a brilliant study in the arbitrary nature of human empathy and prejudice. Her singular implacability towards strangers and those outside her established order stems from a deep-seated provincialism and a need for predictable routines. Her loyalty is intense, but narrow.
So the newspaper tears are easy.
Exactly. Her tears for distant suffering are cheap, requiring no personal effort or confrontation with messy reality. However, her delight in barbarians reveals a profound attachment to established social norms and customs. Deviation from the expected is not just wrong, but genuinely amusing to her, highlighting a kind of childlike joy in the perceived superiority of her own small world. The back kitchen tragedies refer to her often cruel and calculating behavior towards those beneath her in the household hierarchy. The scullery maid, for instance, which she views as entirely justified. Proust shows us how deeply ingrained social codes and prejudices can create internal justifications for behaviors that, to an outsider, appear morally contradictory. It's a reminder that even seemingly humble individuals operate within complex social power dynamics.
We also see Dr. Cotter, a leading physician and strategist who, despite his intellectual prowess and profound sagacity in his profession, is depicted as making stupid puns and being literal-minded in social settings.
Yes, Cotter. Brilliant doctor, awkward dinner guest.
His awe of the President of the French Republic is so great that neither the modesty of Swann nor the spite of Madame Verdurin could ever wholly efface that first impression. remaining steadfast. It's remarkable how someone so brilliant in one sphere can be so seemingly awkward or naive in another. What does Proust reveal through Dr. Cottard about the compartmentalization of intelligence and that enduring admiration for authority?
Dr. Cottard is Proust's observation that intellectual brilliance is not a monolithic trait. It's often specialized. A person can be a genius in their field, highly analytical, strategic, and perceptive, yet possess little social finesse or even a certain intellectual naivety in other domains.
So the puns aren't stupidity.
Not necessarily. It could be social awkwardness, a way of attempting humor that falls flat, or maybe a mind so dedicated to scientific rigor that it struggles with the subtle ambiguities of social discourse. His unwavering awe for the president, despite the social circles he moves in, speaks to a different kind of respect. Perhaps for established order, for power, or simply a deeply ingrained deference that transcends critical analysis. It highlights that even the most eminent figures are subject to surprising personal biases and social blind spots, reminding us that intellect doesn't guarantee social grace or immunity from conventional admirations.
And then there's the enigmatic M. de Norpois, the ambassador. He sounds like a master of controlled expression, often listening without seeming to hear, delivering pronouncements with a mechanical and ironic intonation, as if putting his words in inverted commas to disclaim personal responsibility.
Yes, described as having absolute control over his facial muscles, maintaining an unhearing bust in a museum until his voice, like an auctioneer's hammer, delivers a precise, almost sterile judgment.
And his judgment of Bergot, the revered writer, as a mere flute player. That's astonishing, given the narrator's reverence for the writer. What does this highly controlled, almost performative communication style and his dismissive view of art tell us about the world of diplomacy and the values prioritized in high society, especially compared to the narrator's more authentic emotional responses?
More de Norpois embodies the consummate diplomat, for whom every word is a calculated performance. His mechanical and ironic intonation, placing his words in inverted commas, isn't just a quirk, it's a strategic distancing from personal commitment. He is trained to be outwardly unreadable, to project an image of detached authority.
So emotion is a liability.
In his world, yes. His controlled facial muscles mean his internal thoughts are never betrayed externally. This speaks volumes about the artifice of diplomatic life, where genuine emotion and spontaneous expression are liabilities. His dismissal of Bergot as a mere flute player perfectly illustrates a world where practical utility and social standing often trump artistic merit. He sees art not as a profound engagement with truth, but as a trivial pursuit compared to the serious business of statecraft. Proust uses him to highlight the chasm between the subjective, passionate world of the artist and the objective, cynical world of power and social maneuvering. He values precision and control, not the messy, unpredictable revelations of art, which for him might even be considered dangerous or frivolous. It's a stark contrast to the narrator, who finds deep solace and truth in Bergot's work.
This theme of social performance is woven throughout the narrative, isn't it? Impacting everyone from the grandest duchesses to the humble servants, from the way people mix with or label others as people like myself, to the subtle snobbery around titles like the D in names. The sources illustrate how deeply ingrained social codes are.
Absolutely. The Gourmand set, for instance, is described as almost infinitely exacting in the matter of wit and charm, sternly banishing those they find boring or vulgar. And Swann, despite his sophistication, adapts to his new social life with Odette, constructing a new position more appropriate to the companion who was to share it with him.
So what does Proust want us to understand about the cost of this constant adaptation and evaluation of self and others based on these rigid, often arbitrary social rules? How these performances dictate acceptance or exclusion?
Proust is revealing the immense psychological toll of constantly performing a social role. The characters in Search of Lost Time are forever navigating a minefield of unspoken rules, desperate to avoid being labeled boring or vulgar. This leads to a constant, exhausting self-monitoring and a profound lack of authenticity. Swann's adaptation for Odette is a poignant example. He literally reshapes his entire social existence to accommodate his love, which ultimately proves futile.
It sounds exhausting.
It is. The deed in names, the rituals of salons, the banishment of the vulgar. These are not just eccentricities. They are markers of a deeply stratified and judgmental society that demands conformity above all else. The cost is often emotional repression and a fundamental disconnect from one's true self. Proust invites us, you, the listener, to consider how much of our own interactions are genuine versus carefully constructed performances, and how these performances, while offering social belonging, can also isolate us from our deepest truths and from genuine connection with others. It's a world where belonging means sacrificing a piece of yourself, a constant negotiation of identity to fit prescribed molds.
Okay, so let's shift again from the social stage to the volatile, often painful inner world of love and desire.
Right. Our sources pivot here, showing just how much these powerful emotions can shape our perceptions, often leading to immense suffering and a blurring of the lines between imagination and reality. This section delves into the deeply subjective nature of infatuation and attachment, highlighting how the beloved often becomes a canvas for our own projections.
The most poignant example is Swann's love for Odette. Initially, he idealizes her, attempting to establish the aesthetic basis of Odette's beauty, even viewing her through the lens of art as a Florentine painting.
Yes, he finds a fresh charm in that worldly existence when it's pervaded and warmly colored by the flickering light which he has slipped into its midst. This artistic framing makes her beautiful to him, even though his desires had always run counter to his aesthetic taste. He essentially forces his aesthetic preference to align with his physical desire, creating an artificial justification for his attraction.
He wasn't naturally drawn to her type.
The text says not. But his intense desire compelled him to reframe his own preferences. He becomes so consumed that her physical existence, even just being in the room with him still, by the piano at that very moment, ready to be kissed and won, sweeps over him with violent intoxication. It demonstrates how deeply his imagination fuels his perception of her, transforming the mundane into the magical.
And this idealization is tied to the little phrase from Vintul's sonata, isn't it?
Intimately tied. This isn't just any piece of music. Vintul's sonata, and particularly this little phrase, acts as a profound recurring motif throughout Proust's entire multi-volume work. It becomes a profound symbol for Swann, an invisible reality that has the power to liberate in him the room that was needed to contain it, transforming his very soul.
Wow.
The music makes him breathe more deeply, connecting him to a world for which we men were not created, which appears to lack form because our eyes cannot perceive it, to lack significance because it escapes our intelligence. He feels it's better, really, than an orchestra, more complete.
So it's more than just music.
Much more. It's the embodiment of his love, a new form of beauty that offers him intense happiness, but also foreshadows deep pain. It espoused our mortal state, had endued a vesture of humanity that was affecting enough, becoming an ornament of the human soul. This connection of music to his soul illustrates how art can crystallize and give form to emotions that are otherwise inexpressible or incomprehensible, acting as a direct conduit to profound subjective truth, a kind of transcendent talisman for his love.
But then the descent into jealousy for Swann is agonizing. His discovery of Odette's possible infidelity with Forcheville.
And the agonizing truth that her own mother may have sold her when she was still a little more than a child at Nice plunges him into a new circle of hell.
He wishes he could live until he no longer loved her, just so he could finally learn the truth about her past, freed from the torment of present feeling.
Yes, and this reveals a chilling aspect of love. The constant killing effort to make himself attractive, and the reliance on advantages not contained in his person or in his intellect. He begins to pay her liberally, so he can forego the endless killing effort to make himself attractive and rely instead on a sound commercial interest to prolong their relationship.
Wow, that's bleak. What does Proust convey by showing his love becoming this malady, this constant gnawing pain that transforms his character and turns the initial idealization into such torment?
Proust is showing the destructive, obsessive nature of possessive love, especially when it's built on such a fragile foundation of idealization. Swann's love for Odette becomes a true illness, a malady that consumes him. His desire for truth about her past, even at the cost of his own feelings, speaks to the agonizing torment of jealousy, where knowledge becomes more valuable than happiness. The shift from passionate pursuit to a sound commercial interest in their relationship is a brutal commentary on how love can degrade into transactional arrangements when trust and genuine connection are absent.
It just strips away the romance?
Completely. It reveals the desperate, almost transactional nature of a love driven by insecurity and fear of abandonment. Proust suggests that such love is less about the other person and more about the projection of one's own desires and fears onto them, leading to an endless cycle of suspicion and suffering.
What's particularly striking here is the idea that love and jealousy are, neither of them, single, continuous, and individual passions. They are composed of an infinity of successive loves, of different jealousies, each of which is ephemeral.
Yes, that's a key insight.
It explains how Swann could sometimes feel cured of his suspicion, only for the pain to resurface next morning when he awoke. This isn't just a literary observation, is it? It feels like a profound insight into the fluid, fragmented nature of our deepest emotions.
It absolutely is. This is a truly revolutionary psychological insight from Proust, one that resonates deeply with modern understandings of emotion. He's challenging the very notion of a static self with fixed emotions.
So we're not just in love or jealous.
Exactly. Instead, he presents our inner life as a river of constantly shifting states. What we call love or jealousy is merely a convenient label for a multitude of ephemeral sensations, thoughts, and physiological reactions that ebb and flow. Swann's pain doesn't just disappear, it recedes momentarily, diluted by other sensations, only to resurface with renewed force because the underlying trigger or unresolved core issue remains. It's described as the sharpness of this pain that had awakened him, even as the external torrent of different impressions briefly dilutes it.
So for us, the listener, what does that mean?
Well, it suggests that when you feel overwhelmed by an emotion, it's not a single immovable block, but a collection of transient states. Understanding this fluidity can offer a pathway to processing difficult emotions, knowing that even intense pain is composed of fleeting instances that can, over time, transform or dissipate. It's a profound testament to the dynamic, ever-changing nature of our inner world.
The narrator's own romantic journey seems to echo Swann's, showing a similar pattern of idealization and then disappointment. His intense longing for his mother's goodnight kiss, describing it as the strongest desire I had in the world, highlights a primal need for affection and comfort, doesn't it? A deep-seated vulnerability that shapes his later romantic attachments.
Definitely. And his initial idealization of Albertine, seeking all the unknown element in her life into which I would fain have plunged, also leads to disappointment and melancholy. He even attempts to establish the aesthetic basis of Odette's beauty through Bergot's writings, suggesting that pattern of intellectualizing desire again.
So how does this intellectualization serve as a coping mechanism for him? A way of giving consistency to feelings that are inherently inconsistent and fleeting.
The narrator, much like Swann, consistently tries to impose intellectual order on the chaos of his emotions. This intellectualization, whether it's through Bergot's writings to frame Odette's beauty or through philosophical frameworks to understand his own attractions, is a defense mechanism against the volatile, often irrational nature of desire.
He wants to make sense of it.
Precisely. He wants to understand, to define, to categorize, to make sense of what is fundamentally inexplicable. But love, for Proust, defies such neat intellectual packaging. The consistency he seeks is an illusion. The text subtly hints that by intellectualizing, he often distances himself from the raw, authentic feeling, making it harder to truly experience or resolve the emotion. It's a way of trying to control the uncontrollable, to give form to the formless, and it often leads to inevitable melancholy when reality fails to conform to his idealized mental constructs.
And then there's Albertine. The narrator is drawn to her and her band of nymphs, initially seeing them through a collective charm, a harmonious group without individual distinction.
Right. His desires are described as purely subjective, impotent, illusory creatures of my temperament, highlighting how much imagination fuels infatuation, creating an image that may not correspond to reality.
And he struggles with his will to pursue her versus the nerves and brain that question the real value of the pleasure of knowing her. That reveals an internal conflict between instinct and rational assessment.
It really does. And it's fascinating how her nasal intonation, initially unpleasant, becomes charming because it is peculiar to herself.
What does that transformation of a perceived flaw into a unique and desirable trait illustrate about the subjective and often irrational nature of love? How affection remakes perception?
It's a perfect encapsulation of how love operates on its own illogical terms. The collective charm of the band of nymphs initially draws him in, a kind of undifferentiated desire for an idealized group. But as Albertine emerges as an individual, his imagination begins to work overtime, imbuing her with qualities, even flaws, that become uniquely appealing because they are hers.
So the nasal voice becomes cute.
Essentially, yes. Her nasal intonation isn't objectively beautiful, but through the lens of infatuation, it transforms into an endearing quirk, a signature of her individuality. This demonstrates how love isn't about seeing the beloved as they are, but as a projection of our own desires and fantasies. The internal struggle between will and nerves and brain highlights the mind's attempt to rationalize or resist irrational attraction, ultimately showing that true desire often bypasses logic, creating its own subjective reality where flaws can become features, and what's peculiar becomes endearing.
The text suggests that to strip our pleasures of imagination is to reduce them to their own dimensions, that is to say, to nothing. This implies that true pleasure, especially in love, isn't just about the object itself, but about the imaginative landscape we build around it, the dreams and possibilities we project onto the beloved.
Exactly. And the sorrowful desire for Albertine, though painful, is described as exhilarating, precisely because it expands his sense of self, offering a prolongation, that possible multiplication of oneself, which is happiness.
Okay, what does that profound statement on the transformative power of unfulfilled longing and the internal worlds it creates mean for our understanding of happiness and self-expansion?
This is a cornerstone of Proust's philosophy on pleasure and self. He suggests that genuine pleasure, particularly in love and even in anticipation, resides less in the tangible reality of the object or person, and more in the imaginative landscape we construct around it. When we strip away that imagination, when we see things purely for what they are, without the shimmer of our hopes and dreams, they often become nothing, flat, uninteresting, devoid of their captivating allure.
So the longing itself is valuable.
In a way, yes. The narrator's sorrowful desire for Albertine is exhilarating, not because the pain itself is enjoyable, but because the very act of longing, of yearning, forces his inner world to expand. It's a prolongation, that possible multiplication of oneself. Because in wishing, in dreaming, he envisions countless possibilities, countless versions of himself fulfilled by that love. This unfulfilled desire, ironically, offers a kind of boundless freedom and internal growth that actual possession often stifles. It's a powerful lesson. True happiness might not be in acquiring what we desire, but in the rich, expansive internal world that desire creates within us, the imaginative deep dive into our own potential.
Okay, so beyond memory and social dynamics and the complexities of love, the source material offers powerful insights into the transformative power of art. It's not just a reflection of reality, but a way of seeing and understanding it anew, a process that can strip away our preconceived notions and reveal a deeper, more personal truth. Art becomes a vehicle for deeper perception, not just representation.
Precisely. Consider Elstir, the painter. He doesn't paint things as he knows them to be, but according to the optical illusions that constitute our first sight of them. He aims to reproduce things not as he knew them to be, but according to the optical illusions. He transforms familiar scenes like the Bay of Baalbek by revealing its true essence, describing it as the Gulf of Opal, painted by Whistler in his harmonies in blue and silver.
Right.
This is a profound statement on how art can strip away our preconceived notions and reveal a deeper, more personal truth, a masterpiece achieved merely by copying the movement of a shoulder, the tension of the throat.
So what does this artistic approach, this deliberate unlearning of conventional knowledge to embrace the immediate, raw impression, mean for how we perceive the world around us? It's almost like art teaches us to see again, doesn't it? To bypass the intellectual notion that names give things and instead perceive the raw, true impressions. The example of the church steeple, sketched on the sky by the fingernail of a painter, emphasizes this artistic refinement of nature.
Exactly. It makes us appreciate the little sign of art within reality, showing how art can distill the essence of a natural scene, capturing its fleeting beauty and making us aware of the subtle, almost hidden artistry in the world around us. It's about seeing beyond the physical structure to the impression it makes, much like the Violet Bell, the dome of St. Augustine, that transforms a Parisian view into something out of Piranesi's etchings.
So how does Elstir's approach connect to the idea of uncovering those deeper lost truths that ordinary perception overlooks?
Elstir's approach is a direct parallel to the concept of involuntary memory. Just as a taste can bypass our conscious mind and unlock a forgotten world, Elstir's painting bypasses our intellectual understanding of an object and captures its pure impression.
So he paints the feeling, not just the thing.
In a sense, yes. We know a church steeple is stone, solid, but Elstir paints it as a delicate sketch against the sky, as a violet bell. This forces us to confront our initial immediate sensory experience before it's categorized and labeled by our intellect. He makes us see the world with fresh eyes, revealing the inherent artistry in nature itself, and highlighting the subjective, almost illusory nature of what we consider objective reality. His art doesn't represent, it reveals, inviting us to engage with the world on a deeper, more intuitive level, much like the process of uncovering a profound lost memory. It's a lesson in active, sensory perception, not just passive observation.
The actress Berma further exemplifies this transformative power of art. Her performance of Phèdre is described as not just acting, but a masterpiece of interpretation.
Yes, the play itself becomes no more than the material, the raw clay for her artistry. She embodies the character with a living substance, transforming her costumes and gestures into expressions of the soul.
And the source says her voice and movements were nothing more round this embodiment of an idea, placing the interpreter on par with, or even above, the original creator. What does this elevation of the performer to such a level of creative significance tell us about the dynamic process of artistic truth? How she allows the audience to access the personal poetry she extracts from the play?
Berma's artistry challenges our very understanding of creation. She doesn't merely recite lines. She becomes the character in such a profound way that the playtext, however brilliant, becomes secondary. Her interpretation infuses the work with a living substance, making the intangible emotions of the character tangible for the audience.
So the performer is a co-creator.
Absolutely. It demonstrates that truth in art is not static within the written text, but dynamically recreated and experienced through the performer's unique vision. She reveals the personal poetry of the play by drawing from her own depths of understanding and emotion, translating the abstract ideas of the author into a visceral, lived experience for the audience. It's a testament to the idea that art is a collaborative act, completed not just by the original creator, but by the interpreter and ultimately the receptive audience. It's in this dynamic exchange that the deepest truths of the work are truly unlocked.
And then there's Bergot, the revered writer. His divine books possess a harmonious flow of imagery and an abundant crop of clearly defined ideas. Yet, in Curson, his conversation is described as affected or unpleasant, leading the narrator to struggle to reconcile a man with his work.
Right, this disconnect between the artist's personal foibles and the objective beauty of their art is a recurring theme. The source also notes that his physiological sincerity, like a blush, does not exclude moral duplicity, suggesting that artistic genius is separate from personal virtue.
What does this reveal about the relationship between the creator and their creation, and the importance of separating the artist's personal life from the timeless quality of their work?
Proust is deliberately drawing a distinction between the artist as a human being, flawed, ordinary, even unpleasant, and the transcendent, enduring quality of their art. Bergot, in person, might be a disappointment to the narrator, his conversation affected or unpleasant, but his divine books remain untouched by his personal shortcomings.
So their art stands alone.
That's the crucial point. The genius, the profound truth, resides in the work itself, not necessarily in the virtue or charm of the individual who created it. Proust suggests that physiological sincerity, an unconscious blush, doesn't preclude moral duplicity. An artist can be a morally complex person and still produce work of profound truth and beauty. This allows us, the audience, you, the listener, to appreciate art on its own terms, to find its objective beauty and insight without needing to idolize or scrutinize the artist's personal life. It's a powerful argument for the autonomy of art, a reminder that the authentic utterance of genius might not always conform to polite social expectations or personal virtue.
The contrast is crucial. Bergot's abundant crop of clearly defined ideas in his writing is distinct from the Bergot manner appropriated by other storytellers. It implies that true genius is unique and inimitable, impossible to simply copy or reduce to a formula.
Exactly. And despite Monsieur de Norpois's dismissive view of Bergot as a flute player, the narrator clings to the profound value of his work, which validates his moments of dreaming, of enthusiasm, of self-confidence.
This highlights art's capacity to offer profound solace and intellectual validation, even when dismissed by conventional society. How does art, in this sense, provide a personal and internal truth that transcends external judgment or fleeting social opinions?
This point underscores the unique and personal impact of true art. The Bergot manner that others try to copy is just a superficial imitation. It lacks the authentic insight that comes from true genius. Monsieur de Norpois's dismissive flute player comment, typical of a man who prioritizes social and diplomatic utility, completely misses the profound value of Bergot's work. For the narrator, Bergot's writings are not just entertainment, they are a source of profound affirmation. They validate his deepest thoughts, his moments of dreaming, of enthusiasm, of self-confidence, which might otherwise be dismissed or feel isolated in a society that often prioritizes external achievements. Art, in this context, becomes a private sanctuary, a mirror that reflects and legitimizes one's inner world, providing solace and meaning that no amount of social approval or external validation can match. It's a testament to art's enduring power to connect with us on a deeply personal level, offering a truth that is immune to the vagaries of social judgment.
Ultimately, what these artistic explorations reveal is that art provides a pathway to something more solid and absolute than fleeting human experiences. The little phrase of Venturi Sonata, which we discussed earlier in the context of Swann's love, resurfaces here. It is described as having espoused our mortal state, had endued a vesture of humanity that was affecting enough. It becomes an ornament of the human soul.
Yes, and art allows us to delve downwards into the depths, in the only direction that is not closed to us, along which we are free to advance. Though with more effort, it is true towards a goal of truth.
What does it mean that art is the path to an invisible reality that offers a kind of liberation and a deeper understanding, transforming the ephemeral into the eternal and the subjective into a shared, transcendent truth?
This is perhaps Proust's most profound claim about art. He argues that art offers a unique access point to an invisible reality that lies beneath the surface of everyday life and fleeting emotions. While social interactions are often deceptive and love can be agonizingly ephemeral, art provides something enduring. The little phrase of Vinteuil's sonata, by taking on a vesture of humanity, becomes a universal expression of emotion and beauty, transcending its initial context to become an ornament of the human soul.
It goes beyond the individual.
Exactly. It's a pathway to truth because it compels us to look downwards into the depths, into our own inner world, into the essence of things, rather than just their appearance. This journey requires effort, but it's the only direction not closed to us, meaning it's the only path towards genuine understanding and liberation from the superficiality of daily existence. Art, by capturing and expressing these deep, often ineffable truths, transforms our subjective experiences into something shareable and eternal, offering a profound sense of meaning and connection that endures long after the initial moments of experience have faded. It allows us to truly deep dive into human consciousness.
So, as we conclude this deep dive, we've journeyed through the intricate landscapes of memory, witnessing how the most ordinary sensations can unlock entire worlds, recreating a sense of self and place with astonishing vividness. We've explored the complex social theater where appearances often belie deeper truths and hidden motivations, showing how ingrained performances shape our interactions and perceptions of others, and even ourselves. And we've grappled with the tumultuous, fragmented nature of love and desire, seeing how they intertwine with imagination and suffering, revealing emotions not as fixed states, but as ephemeral, successive experiences.
And crucially, we've seen how art, through the eyes of painters like Elstir, performers like Berma, and writers like Bergat, offers a powerful lens for perceiving and reinterpreting reality. It provides moments of clarity and access to invisible realities, capable of transforming our deepest sorrows into profound insights, and helping us find truth in a world of shifting perceptions. Art, unlike fleeting social encounters or the often painful reality of love, offers a more solid and absolute pathway, a way to access deeper truths that reside not just in the external world, but within the depths of our own consciousness, offering a kind of permanence in a transient existence.
The source material leaves us with a truly provocative thought. The narrator's ultimate realization that existence to us is hardly interesting save on the days on which the dust of realities is shot with magic sand, on which some trivial incident of life becomes a spring of romance. It reminds us that the search itself, the act of deep diving into our own experiences and the world around us, of paying attention to the unnoticed, is perhaps the most enriching journey of all. Capable of transforming the mundane into the magical, revealing a whole promontory of the inaccessible world in the light of our own understanding.
It's a profound invitation for you, our listener, to continue your own deep dive, to pay attention to those fleeting sensations, the subtle social cues, and the transformative power of art in your own life. Because, as the source suggests, perhaps there's always more to uncover, more of your lost time, waiting to be found within the depths of your own experience, waiting to be illuminated by that magic sand that transforms ordinary moments into springs of romance and truth. The question then becomes, what hidden landscapes will your next sensation unlock?